Welcome to the information session for the expression of interest for public art on the Sydney Metro Western Sydney Airport line. Just a little bit of housekeeping. We'd like you please to pop your cameras off. If you look down the bottom part of your screen under the PowerPoint, you can turn your camera off there, and you can also turn your mic off. This will help us focus on the presenters during the session. This Stage 1 EOI is a partnership between Sydney Metro and Create New South Wales, and today you'll meet many of the team involved. But firstly, I'd like to acknowledge Sophie and Dana from Sweeney Interpreting. They're here doing the Auslan interpreting on screen. We also have live captioning, which is being provided by Eddie and Natalie, and they will introduce themselves via the chat. So if you have a look up the top, you could pop on active cameras in the center of the screen. That way you'll see the presenters. And then if you journey over to the right, you can see the little participants icon. Next to it, you see a little cartoon square box. That's the chat. You can post you can chat there to everyone, or you could direct a comment to Eddie and Natalie should you have any problem with the live captioning. The react button, if you want to do a thumbs up or put your hand up, is down the bottom left, but you shouldn't need it because we want you to converse in the chat today. Wonderful. Okay, so Lucas is popping up the housekeeping in the chat. Cameras off, mics on mute. View everyone, and if you'd like to ask a question, you're free to do that at any time, and we'll be answering those questions during the Q&A segment towards the end of the seminar. Next slide, please, Jane. The aim of today's session is to clarify Sydney Metro public art process and context. We'll present the public art expression of interest for Sydney Metro Western Sydney Airport line. We're going to offer some tips for applicants and provide an opportunity for you to ask questions. So in order to do that, the agenda includes an introduction to the Sydney Metro line from Project Director Angela Jeffries. Then we'll come back to me and I'll outline the Sydney Metro Art Program. Then Katie Westlake will feature in an interview discussing what is different about public art in the station context. Then back to me, we'll talk a little bit about the expression of interest, and then Create will share some information with applicants about tips for this process. And then the floor will open up for the Q&A with Elizabeth Lowe. But first and foremost, our welcome to country. I'd like to introduce you now to artist and art advisor, Bibi Barber, who will welcome us to today.
Well, thank you, Amanda. In Gadigal language, Bagari Gamarara, which means good day, and Warami, welcome. My name is Bibi Barber. I'm a saltwater woman from the Durrabal Camaragal Yuin Nation. I stand on Camaragal land, and I like to acknowledge and make that known and to pay my respects to my elders, past, present and emerging, and those of Aboriginal people and backgrounds of diversity in this meeting today. I'd like to pay my respects and thank you.
Next slide, please, Jane. Bibi.
Thank you, Amanda. So Durrick and Durrawal communities have lived here for generations, and the cultural diasporas of diverse Aboriginal people also call this place home. It is an incredible place, the Sydney Basin. Aboriginal land councils in the area, including the Darebin and Gandangara, but also too, you've got 230 languages other than English are spoken in Western Sydney: Arabic, Vietnamese, Mandarin, Cantonese and Hindu. The international airport will be a gateway to Sydney and to Australia. As you can see in the information that we have here, we have a text and we have a map which talks about the extensive of the line: St Mary's, Orchard Hills, Ludlam Business Park, Airport Terminal and the Aerotropolis. So this is what the EO is all about, and please enjoy the session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bibi. It's wonderful to have you working with us. I'd now like to welcome Angela Jeffries, the Project Director responsible for the project delivery of the Sydney Metro Western Sydney Airport Link. Angela is going to give us a little bit of a background to this incredible project.
Wonderful. Thank you, Amanda. It's such a delight to be here. It's been terrific to be able to collaborate with you all. And look, just as by way of a quick introduction, my name is Angela Jeffrey. I am the Project Director for Western Sydney Airport Metro, and I wanted to start off just by a bit of context about my, who I am before I kick off about some of the project details. I have a bachelor degree in interior architecture, and then I have a construction management postgrad. So the work that you're looking to participate in is really dear to my own heart, and it's such an important aspect of the success of our projects and delivering great places for the community of Western Sydney and Sydney more broadly. The project itself is one of 4 projects that Sydney Metro is currently either operating or delivering. So the Northwest Line has been in operations for 3 years, and the West and City and Southwest lines are in delivery, as is the Western Sydney Airport line. So you can see our project in Darug country, or Western Sydney, is from St Mary's with a station at Orchard Hills, Ludlam, the airport terminal station, and a station at the business park, and another station at the end of the line for now at the Aerotropolis.
Next
slide. So our project is, the strategic context of the project is it's one of many commitments of the Western Sydney City Deal, which is a tripartite agreement between the Commonwealth at a federal level, the state government, and it also includes the signatures of 8 municipalities at a local government level. It has funding by both the state and Commonwealth, and obviously shows the commitment of both the Prime Minister and the Premier to delivering this project, given the significant benefit it will provide, connecting people along the Western Sydney spine and connecting people to the new Western Sydney Airport. Next slide. At Sydney Metro, we're committed to delivering a great product. The St Mary's station will catalyse and revitalise the town centre. So many of you may have already experienced the development that is occurring at St Mary's, but obviously this project will catalyse further investment, further regeneration, and really deliver a strategic centre that's been earmarked at St Mary's. We have a future commercial mixed-use precinct planned for Orchard Hills, a future research, innovation and commercial precinct at Ludlam. The airport business park is on Commonwealth lands and co-located close to the airport in order to deliver major employment and services hub that's synergistic with the services that the airport will provide. Importantly, the station at the airport will connect passengers to the international airport and to the rest of the world. And, you know, the flagship station at the Western Sydney Aerotropolis, which is a future economic hub for the greater Western Sydney and is one of the 6 cities that is documented in the 6 cities strategy. It's been an absolute pleasure, Sue, to join you and Create New South Wales and the wonderful artists who are interested in this exciting project. I'm really thrilled and privileged to be able to present today, and I look forward to the exciting ventures that are delivered as a part of this project. Amanda, that's really terrific to be part of this. Thank you. Handing back to you.
Thank you so much, Angela. We really appreciate you attending today. It's a clear demonstration of Sydney Metro's commitment to public art on this legacy program, so much appreciated. Thank you. Now, just hi there, Sue. Thanks for joining us. Just a note to pop your camera off while we see the presenters. So if you go down the bottom in the middle, you can switch your camera off. Thank you. Great. So next slide, please, Jane. Just a little bit about Sydney Metro's art program. The vision is to elevate the customer's experience with art and engagement. And the objectives are to improve the customer's experience and make great places. We want to promote inclusivity, community involvement, and public pride. We want to have a creative presence at every station. And we aim to commission diverse and high quality, enduring public art that really is a legacy for future generations to enjoy. So this art program is guided by the Sydney Metro Art Master Plan. This is an overarching framework, and it outlines the vision, the objectives, processes, and governance structures that we use to commission excellent, durable, and sustainable public art, and make sure that it's integrated into the design of the station and the local precincts. So this is a public document. It's accessible via the EOI and also on Sydney Metro website. Next slide, please, Jane. In the Sydney Metro Art Master Plan, we describe the three-stage commissioning process that is used. So first step, stage one, this is where we're at now, the expression of interest. It's a call to artists, both as individuals and teams, and it involves Sydney Metro in partnership with Create New South Wales. Once you submit your EOIs, an independent expert panel will select shortlisted artists or teams and notify them of the outcome in December. Stage two is likely to occur next year. At this stage, shortlisted artists or teams are paid to develop a concept in response to a specific brief. A second expert panel reviews the presentations and will select the competition winners. This stage is a partnership between the delivery partner for this new line and Sydney Metro, and it requires approval by Sydney Metro Public Art Working Group. Stage three sees the successful artist or team being selected for each commission, and they sign a contract with this delivery partner who is running the line, and they proceed to design, development, delivery and installation. Again, Sydney Metro will provide oversight and approval through our Public Art Working Group. So we're just at stage one today, and reminder that we're inviting you to submit information about your skills and experience via Smarty grants. You are not required to submit a concept. We are selecting shortlisting artists, not concepts at this stage. Next slide, please. We'd love to take this opportunity to share more of the artworks that have been commissioned by Sydney Metro and being installed as we speak, but we have to wait for the stations to open. Here you can see 4 images from the Northwest Line, which opened in 2019. Here the artists work closely with architects and technical specialists to integrate public art into the spaces and structures, the light and life of 8 new stations and their precincts. The last 2 slides are from Sydenham Station, images are from Sydenham Station, and that features a socially engaged project where the artist interviewed locals. She then transcribed the interviews and cast them into bronze plaques, which are scattered like papers falling from a briefcase across the station plazas. Sydney Metro has commissioned 19 new major public artworks in Metro stations since 2018. Leading this project has been Katie Westlake, Associate Director of Design from Sydney Metro. Katie is now going to participate in an interview with Elizabeth Lowe, the Senior Manager of Communications, and discuss what is different about public art on Sydney Metro. End of slide.
Thanks, Amanda. Katie, it is wonderful to have the opportunity to speak with you and share your knowledge. You've been leading the program at Sydney Metro since 2018, so a vast experience of knowledge. We all know that permanent art has a lifespan of about 20 years, and we need to consider the context and materials and specifications. Really looking forward to hearing from you on what is different about the public art at Sydney Metro.
Hi, Elizabeth. Nice to be here, and a big welcome to all the artists who've joined online to hear about this fabulous new expression of interest process. So, Elizabeth, I think there's probably three key areas where Sydney Metro art might be a bit different from standard public artwork, and that's to do with the scale of the project and the extent of the technical and functional requirements that are required to be considered by most artworks. And also because of the amount of integration that most artists and artist teams need to undertake with the rest of the station design and delivery process.
So a good place to start, I would think, would be a further discussion about the scale.
Okay, well, we all know that Sydney Metro is Australia's biggest infrastructure project, and that makes everything about working on the project big. For instance, the stations on in the Western Sydney Airport line, they're going to be 85 metres long. Oh, the platforms will be 85 metres long, and the stations are large too. And so most of the artworks tend to need to be large to read well in that kind of big environment. But it also means that there's many people and teams working on the project, including the Sydney Metro contractor delivery teams, and that often makes for a lot of interfaces with different types of people, and it also means that there's long time frames from to do all the stages that are required to get this whole line set out and designed and built and running.
So would it be worth providing a bit more background on what the time lag is between those key time frames?
Yes, sure. So I guess we're running this EOI now for WSA. Though I shouldn't use acronyms. That's a big metro thing.
No.
It's always talking acronyms, the Western Sydney Airport line. But so we're running that now. But and we need to do that now because we need to get the artists involved in the process and to know kind of where the artworks will be so they can be integrated well into the rest of the station environment. But the artworks won't actually be starting to be built probably until around 2025. So that is quite a long timeline.
Is it worth also providing a bit of background and touching on the technical and functional requirements and what that actually means? Yes,
I know that's a kind of a nice glib term, isn't it? So I guess with the functional requirements, the artworks they're in these station environments, and so they need to be carefully located and resolved so they don't interfere with any of the key station functions, which is getting people from the entrance and through the station and onto the train and then through the station at the other place. And so that impacts, that the artworks can't impact the wayfinding and they can't sort of block pedestrian flow and that kind of thing. And I guess with the technical requirements, well, safety is a really key concern at Sydney Metro, and many of the artworks, not all of them for this line, will be located in station environments, and so that means that when they're thought about and realised they need to meet all the same requirements that other station elements need to meet. And so that can really impact strongly on the types of materials that need to be used. For instance, often artworks cannot be made out of, generally be made out of plastics in these kind of environments because if plastic was to catch fire, it would cause fumes and that kind of thing. So it does also mean that there's kind of a limitation on the range of materials that are able to be used in many of these artworks.
You know, I talking about the background to Sydney Metro and that work, I think over the years we take for granted all the work that's gone into it. Now, perhaps people on the call and all the artists would be thinking, why can't the station teams do more of the architectural and engineering work? Because that would certainly be a question I had if I was an artist.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a good question. And it would be fair to say that the station architectural and engineering teams do generally get involved with the artwork to some degree because they need to make sure that whatever the artwork ends up being, that it is actually physically integrated with all the surrounding elements. And they often, they have to kind of provide sign off that some kind of safety requirements and things like that are met. But we also find that most of the artists who have been working, for instance, on the big city stations, they generally have had quite large technical teams that support them. And they usually have brought these teams on at competition stage and to help them kind of nut out a few of the kind of parameters, but also often these technical support team, they're really important when the artwork's being developed and integrated into the station because there's a lot of, for instance, technical drawings, and many artists don't have the kind of capacity or the programs to read these technical drawings. Actually, there are specialist designers and engineers who like to work with artists, and they can actually be much more supportive than a standard, for instance, station engineer. There's a huge range of engineers who have different specializations. So, and often we found that these technical support teams that work with the artists, who the artist might have brought on with them, they are really key in sort of navigating. They can talk to the station architects and engineers on the other side, and so it's just that idea that
interface.
They can interface and also really so understanding the artwork and the possibilities from a technical perspective for the artist's sake.
So, good question, a good call out. Actually, to clarify, do the artists need that level of technical expertise on their team?
Well, we would recommend that for the bigger works that the artists have this technical support. They do not need to have it at expression of interest stage. They probably need to have it at competition stage, and we have actually adjusted the artist fees a little bit for this art program because we've realised that it is important for artists to be able to at least get some technical input when they're developing their concepts, and we've allowed for that in the competition fees. And that's also why we generally kind of say that our commissions are mostly aimed at experienced public artists. But if you're not an experienced public artist, we are really encouraging you to team up with an experienced public artist. Another way that we've done this on a previous line, or a line that's being built at the moment on the southwest line, is that Metro actually engaged a technical advisor specifically to support artists. We kind of limited or more strongly defined the type of artwork that the artist could submit for, and more clearly defined the specific artistic skills and experience they needed. And in that way, we were able to open the Southwest competition to more emerging artists or artists who hadn't necessarily worked in public art before. We are not doing that for this airport line. But Angela mentioned and Amanda mentioned that Metro is actually in the process of engaging a station delivery partner, a contractor, who will be delivering the whole of the future design and construction of this line. And they will need to have an art technical team. We are planning that they have an art technical team on board to support artists. But as I said before, it is very beneficial for artists. We found in the past if they also have this technical support within their team, because it just really helps with all those interfaces.
And actually, just jumping back to that, just for clarification, would there be any other types of team members that artists need to think about for later in the EOI process?
Well, I guess that, that will depend. I guess artists will know more about that if they are shortlisted and then they're invited into a competition and they see the competition brief, because the competition briefs are specific for each commission and a lot more information is provided. But for instance, artists might generally need to engage some legal support for when they're resolving the contracts. Artists might have, specialists if they're working in a socially engaged way, or they intend to kind of involve members of the community and that kind of thing. They might want to have specialist people who can help support them through that type of process too.
Working on the Metro project, because this is my 7th year and this is a similar year for you also, you actually did touch on the interface and the integration required. I think it'd be great if we could hear a bit more from you what that actually means.
The integration of the artworks into the stations. Is that what you're asking about?
Yeah.
Yes. So
yeah.
I mean, the stations are like we've all been to stations, and with the artwork needs to read as part of that station. Sydney Metro puts a lot of energy into delivering a very high customer experience and to really coordinating all the design and other elements in that station environment so that it's harmonious and it's coordinated. And in a way, the purpose of our art is to actually lift that experience. The art is, it's one of the elements we focus on to really bring some liveliness and joy to the stations. But nevertheless, it does need to be integrated into that environment and to complement the environment, because, I mean, one of the things that can happen when people are in a station environment, they're very focused on wayfinding, for instance, and finding out where they have to go and getting there quickly. And so, for instance, we don't allow art at what are called decision-making points. So we can't confuse customers. We can't kind of put the art in places where they might get distracted or where people might be standing and get to look at the art and get knocked over by other people. So we're very careful about organising that, and that is an integration exercise. And then, of course, there's all those kind of sort of structural kind of integration exercises. For instance, they might, the station will have cladding and that'll be applied to a substructure. But if the art has a different kind of weight or is a different material, then that substructure might need to be designed in a different way to accommodate the bit where the artwork goes. And it just goes on. There's so many different ways that integration is required to be very sort of carefully thought through.
It's a great project. I mean, I do. I love the Sydney Metro project. I am conscious of the time, Katie, and I know we could wax lyrical because we love it. Are there any other key considerations you would like to share with this wonderful group of people we have?
I guess, Elizabeth, I'm just conscious that I've probably pointed out all the tricky bits of this art, and I think we thought it's important that artists are aware of these particular requirements for Sydney Metro art, because it really helps you to sort of scope out, to navigate and think about who you might apply with or what's going to be in front of you. I wouldn't want to discourage. Well, first of all, I'd like to say it's probably not the easiest environment to deliver public art in Sydney Metro, but I still want to encourage people to apply, because the art is so important, and artists are succeeding in doing that as we speak, and the art brings so much joy and pleasure to the stations and for people using those stations.
It is. It's wonderful. Back to you, Amanda.
Great. Thank you so much, Katie and Elizabeth. That was really interesting and I think very useful to everyone. Just a reminder to all the artists joining us that you can ask questions in the chat. You can find that on the top right corner of, it's a little speech square. And if you just pop in there, you can put your question there, because we are hosting the questions from the chat. So yeah, anything that comes to mind, just pop it in there. Yeah, I'm very new to Metro, but I must say it's incredibly hard to comprehend what's actually happening beneath the ground of Sydney at the moment. It's truly a city-shaping project, and the public art that I've had glimpses of is really exciting and inspiring. It's bold, it's truly excellent, and a legacy-building project. So it's something really exciting to be part of. Next slide, please, Jane. I'm now just going to talk a little bit about the specific Western Sydney Airport line expression of interest. This line is, as Angela said, 50% state and federally funded. So we've opened the opportunity to artists across Australia. And we're looking to commission, back with the slide, we're looking to commission 9 new public artworks. These are major commissions. One of the commissions is a line-wide work. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But this work will have 6 expressions. So they will distinguish each station, yet somehow have a consistent materiality, form, or theme that connects the line. This is the largest of these commissions. The 8 standalone artworks are proposed for station entrances and public places, including the line and the active transport link, which is cycle and pedestrian use. 3 of the 9 public art commissions have been identified as opportunities for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander artists. This is the line-wide work and 2 of the standalone works. This is an incredibly exciting opportunity. As I say, they are major art projects, and of course, this is where the new international airport, everyone that comes into Australia or from around Australia will actually land there and journey along the line to St Mary's. So these public artworks will have really significant profile. Next slide, please. So just to describe what is a line-wide work. This slide features a work in the London Underground called Labyrinth by Mark Wallinger. He created 270 individual works, one for every station on the network. As you can see, they're consistent in that they are all monochromatic and all made of vitreous enamel, which is a material very common to station design. They share a common graphic language, but their design at every station is unique. So Labyrinth is inviting viewers to trace their journeys, to think about the convoluted tunnels underground. And interestingly, it sparked a whole lot of fan clubs where people are connecting on social media and running around the underground trying to find and trace these labyrinths at every station in record time. So it's the line-wide work both connects with a line narrative, a common materiality or form, but it always has a distinct expression at each station. So for this expression of interest, we have the theme of journeys and pathways. This commission has the largest budget as it requires expressions at each of the 6 stations, but it is open to collaborative creative teams only. So this is why we're emphasizing collaboration and ways for you to connect with each other, because even at this stage of your application, you need to include an experienced public artist or artists and Sydney Basin Aboriginal artist or artists. Sydney Basin is a geographic area, so it defines people living from Muswellbrook in the north, Lithgow in the west, and Ulladulla in the south. Next slide, please, Jane. The northwest line we referred to earlier, it's open, you can go and have a look at it, is another example of a line-wide work in Sydney, with 8 news stations and their precincts that have consistent materials and reflect a colour spectrum. So the colour the artists used at each station reflects the recent history of this region as an important food bowl for Sydney. You can see we've got cherry blossom colours, we've got oranges, we've got apples, lemons reflected in the artwork. The works created feature in public plazas, station entrances and concourse areas, and the artists describe them as artful landscapes, sculptural furniture, transparent coloured glazing in skylight lanterns, facades, lifts and escalators, train-activated platform lighting, glazed tiled walls, playful paving, and in some places cooling mist installations. Next slide, please. So the other 8 commissions we're calling standalone. These will feature at the stations and along the active transport link. We're commissioning these to identify and define each station and the local place. Because we want everyone to experience art, stations are really democratic, open spaces, so we're choosing the most publicly accessible places where the work can be enjoyed by commuters and communities alike. Public art commissions will be integrated into the architecture and design. We want them to form part of plazas, entrances and concourses, and the work can feature on walls, ceilings, floors, escalators, stairs and seating. In fact, the beautiful high ceilings and large spaces of the station offer incredible opportunities for 3-dimensional and relief works, as well as potential for suspended or sculptural commissions. Sydney Metro is very committed to sustainability, and as such we support artists getting work fabricated and produced locally wherever possible. Also thinking about the types of materials that you choose. So these 8 standalone commissions are open to all Australian artists. 2 of these will only be open to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander artists. Okay, so I would now like to introduce the Create New South Wales team, who are hosting the session today, thank you Jane, and managing the application process for the EOI. So I'm going to introduce Ashley Collins, who will first talk about the Smarty Grants application process, and then followed by David Everest, who will introduce you to some of the Create New South Wales resources that are available. So over to you, Create.
Actually, the other way around, Amanda. I'm going to... thanks. Hi, everybody. Create New South Wales is very excited to be part of this opportunity and to be supporting the expression of interest part of the process through our Smarty Grants portal. This is where you lodge your expression of interest. The links are on our website and in the guidelines. And if you haven't used Smarty Grants before, it's pretty straightforward. You need to register or log in with an email address and password, etc. But once you've logged in, it's a case of following all the instructions and saving regularly and doing all the sort of things you have to do online these days. So the image on the left, which is probably a bit hard to see, just is what it looks like when you actually log on. There is a Smarty Grants support desk if you've got technical problems with Smarty Grants, or there's also the Create New South Wales Arts funding team that can help with minor issues. And Danella Bennett, whose email, hopefully you can see on that slide there, is the main contact for questions about the guidelines or about the process, but and I'm also available to support. Next slide, please. So on the Create website, there is a number of resources that can help you with this process. Most importantly is the new Aboriginal Arts and Culture Protocols that was launched last year. that was developed by Aboriginal staff at Create and an Aboriginal advisory group. And these are a really important starting point in driving a new body of practice that is Aboriginal self-determination and Aboriginal cultural authority and agency at its foundation. This is a dedicated resource for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander applicants, but we recommend it for everyone to get a better understanding of the issues and complexities of working on country. We also have a public art toolkit, and I'll hand over to Ashley to introduce that.
Thanks, David. Hi, everybody. So the New South Wales Government Public Art Toolkit has been developed by Create New South Wales in consultation with many stakeholders. The toolkit is not yet publicly available, but we are hoping that it will be released in the very near future. And when it is, it will live on our website as an accessible PDF. So the toolkit has been developed with an intended primary audience of New South Wales government agencies, including local councils, but we are really aware that the information inside will be extremely useful for other commissioners of public art and artists. So the toolkit aims to help agencies and any reader really apply best practice principles to the planning, commissioning, implementation and maintenance of public art. It involves, or it contains rather, some guidance notes and case studies that summarise and illustrate the key steps in successfully creating public art. And we also have a lot of other resources that we link to. Some of those are Create New South Wales resources, but there's a lot of external resources from different councils and organisations around the world highlighting best practice in public art. So the toolkit is not actually intended to be read end to end. It is a very large document, but rather we envision that you'll dip into it at certain points according to the information that you need at that time, just like you do getting tools out of a toolbox. The probably most important parts of the toolkit are the principles. So we have some New South Wales public art principles and the First Nations public art principles. And these have been developed to ensure that all the public art that is created is meaningful and ensures that it follows some basic guidelines. And some of these guidelines are enhancing a place or people's lives, respecting the natural world, championing diversity and inclusion, and valuing the artist. And of course, we want to make sure that all public art creates an inclusive, representative and welcoming spaces for on what is Aboriginal land, remembering that all public art in New South Wales sits on Aboriginal land, and really working to enhance and further the informed consent and consultation of First Nations artists and communities, and developing and furthering the integrity of Aboriginal culture through public art. So again, the toolkit contains case studies, and there are 19 detailed case studies of public artworks, including Australian, international and First Nations examples, and we hope artists find these useful as they go from the design to the development to the actual creation of public art. Thank you. I hope you enjoy it.
Fabulous. Thank you, Ashley, and thank you, David. Create, of course, is hosting the expression of interest. All these sort of links are there in the expression of interest, and there's a lot of information on the cultural protocols, which of course will become very important in stage 2 when artists are actually considering the sorts of concepts they're doing. So there'll be more information coming to at that stage. So just next slide, please, Jane. So just to reinforce that Create New South Wales and Sydney Metro are very keen to build sector capacity, and we want to encourage partnerships between senior experienced public artists and other artists, as well as collaborations between artists, engineers and other technical specialists, and of course, as we're saying, creative teams that include Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander artists and other artists. So artists who don't have substantial public art experience yet are encouraged to team up with more experienced artists. And as we've said, applicants for the line-wide work must form creative teams to be eligible. So this is the work you'll need to do now before you put in your Smarty Grants application. So in order to do that, I guess you've all got your networks, your social media platforms, finding each other via LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, or even messaging each other in the chat, some of you have been doing. One of the things we're doing to help you connect with each other, Sydney Metro cannot matchmake. It's difficult to share details due to privacy legislation. But to assist you with creating teams and at least talking to each other, we have developed a consent form. This will be available shortly on the Create New South Wales site where the EOI is. And you can read this form, sign it and email it back to me. And what we'll do is share consenting artists who send their email details. We will share their names with other consenting artists who shared their email details. We'll do 2 group emails during the term of the EOI, and once the EOI closes on the 31st of October, we will delete your emails from our system. So we're doing this to try to provide some assistance, but again, we're not matchmaking anyone, we're just sharing information. Next slide, please, Jane. Some people have been asking about the timeline. Just to articulate, we've kept this EOI open for 8 weeks because we know you have some work to do in terms of meeting and forming teams. So after today, the recording of this session will be available on the Create New South Wales website, as will be the consent form I was talking about. The EOI will close on the 31st of October. The panel will meet in November. And in December, the successful STOM contractor will be announced. Before they're announced, we'll be contacting shortlisted artists advised of the outcome of stage 1. And then next year, we'll start working with the STOM contractor who's actually designing, building and running the line, and we'll be liaising with their public art team to implement the stage 2 competitions. So now it's time to hand over to all of you. The Q&A time has arrived. I'm going to open the floor to Elizabeth Lowe, our Senior Manager of Communications, who's going to facilitate the questions that have been received in the chat. So anyone who hasn't asked a question yet, has got a burning question, this is your time. If you can post those.
Amanda, I've been having just reading some of the questions, and I think it might be good if you stayed on the line so I can ask you a question and feed it back, because at the moment I can see 2 key questions that we don't have responses for. At the competition stage, will artists choose which of the 8 opportunities they wish to apply for?
Yes, so the shortlisted artists will then be paid to respond to a brief. So there'll be specific briefs developed. Artists will be paid to respond to those and can have some input into the sites, as well as the panel having some input into which artist they think is most suitable for which site.
Great.
So
perfect. I've also, we can confirm that we're very happy to share the information in the slide deck, so we'll be able to include that in the chat also and share with participants. There's also 2 questions that focus on the involvement with public art and local councils. Councils certainly have a lot of knowledge, expertise and experience. How are we connecting with them?
Yeah, absolutely. Really important. This is where the grassroots connection to community and creativity occurs. So we have been out talking to local councils in the Western Sydney Airport Line area, and we will continue to do that. We're asking them to communicate with artists in their area and communities. We also have connecting with Country Working Group that's on the ground in this particular area. So what will happen, the expert panel has some deep knowledge of Western Sydney area, and they will guide and advise and the shortlisting of artists for stage 1. And then at stage 2, competition phase, we include representatives from those local government areas to help us create select the winning artists. So we know that then the work has some relationship to place. We understand the other sorts of public art projects that are happening in that place, the key community concerns and the forward planning of those councils to actually make these precincts really vibrant and exciting places. So we integrate that relationship.
Great. Also a question in here regarding that technical expertise that Katie touched on earlier. Do we need an engineer and or technical people at the first stage or not until stage 2?
That's correct. Stage 1 is simply about the experience, skills and previous work that the artist or the artist team has done. So the application, you can actually sort of check that out on Smarty Grants. You can do a preview of the form, and it's just asking you about your previous work and a little bit of an explanation about how you might do these projects. And if you don't have an engineer or technical specialist now, are you willing to engage one should you be successful at stage 2? It's definitely a stage 2 commitment you'd need to make.
Yeah.
Yep.
Also just want to reinforce a question here regarding connecting with other experienced artists. And as you said, you've established those social networks for connecting groups, and that's available?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we've really wrestled with this one. We'd love to be able to do a lot more, but it is difficult. We're asking artists to try and find each other. And as we explained, this opportunity to share your emails is the best we can do within the context of privacy. So we're willing to do that. But there are Facebook groups that Create New South Wales runs. There's some specifically for Aboriginal artists where conversations take place. There also are the local government officers, council officers who have connections with local artists in areas. As well as many of the artists will be members of NAVA. There could be conversations happening on those sorts of platforms, as well as any of your own social networks.
I think we're up to date with some of the questions. There is one that's just come in. Do you estimate how many groups will be shortlisted for the competition stage for the 9 projects?
Okay, well, in previous experience, this depends. It can vary, but we like to have quite a few in that competition phase because that gives that panel some opportunity to review different sorts of concepts and really select the right one for that particular site. So we would like at least 3 or 4 artists or artist teams to be making it onto that shortlist for every site. But we also conscious that the drive is to get the best artists or artist teams, not to just make sure we get a certain number.
Yeah,
does that make
true.
sense? But the
Sure
priority
does.
is to get quite a few people going into competition with each other.
Yeah, understand. I am conscious that there's been a lot of information, wonderful information presented over the last 55 minutes, and there's a lot of detail. A lot of information is in the chat. The key dates are in the chat. And contact details. If I could just ask Lucas and Bronwyn to drop in perhaps Amanda's details and other contact details for people on the call. Are there any other questions that people would like to drop in the chat?
Just to say, Elizabeth, that I won't be able to respond to emails directly in terms of this consent for artists to share information. You have to wait until that form is uploaded onto the Create New South Wales website, enter that form, sign it and email it to me, and that is then your consent for me to connect you with other people who've done the same thing. But a reminder, just the chat's still open. The meeting's open until 2. If you see any artists in this list of participants that you would like to connect with, this is a great opportunity to just send them a quick hi in the chat or share your email with them. It's possible for you to do that now. So as Elizabeth said, the recording will be available. Create New South Wales do have information line you can call. We have some information on the frequently asked questions, so feel free to call and ask those. And also just a little reminder about getting your applications in early, because we know that often we leave them to the last minute, and the Smarty Grants platform can get really clogged up, particularly in that last day leading up to 5 o'clock. So, I really strongly advise you to start your applications, get the basics in, and then you can just keep saving and adding to it as you progress. We don't look at it until it closes, so it's your space to get your work in.
Actually, Amanda, I've just noticed 2 more questions in the chat. One of the questions is, has there been any consultation information collected, and is it available to applicants?
All the information is in the EOI. As we said, this is really about selecting the artists based on their previous experience and skills and work previously done. So the brief in stage 2 is going to be a much meatier part of the process, where there's more information about those specific sites and specific opportunities. So I'd advise you to have a look at the Create side, get familiar with the Sydney Metro Art Master Plan, understand how and why we're doing public art, and have a look at the local governments in those areas and what their cultural planning looks like too. That's all available online if you really want to get more understanding of the area.
Great. And also I think it would be great if we can round out the conversation and this wonderful opportunity just to elaborate more on the requirements for involving local communities in public art and how that all ties together.
Yeah, okay. So at the moment, that's pretty much our work. The Metro Art team is doing that. Also, we're talking, as I said, to councils. We're also talking to the new Western Sydney Airport, who will also be looking at arts projects. So that's all happening. It's not really a time for artists to worry about making those, connecting to those local communities until they are shortlisted. Katie, is there anything else you'd like to comment on? Perhaps I'm just conscious I'm new and you've led this program.
I think you've done a really. Thanks, Amanda. But I think you've pretty well covered everything there. It is expression of interest stage now, so it's really about putting your hat in the ring. And then from this stage, there will be an expert panel that will shortlist minimum 3 artists or artist teams for each of the commissions going forward. And so, as you also said, it's at the next stage when we run the competitions, we have quite specific briefs, and that's when the artists who have been shortlisted will find out a lot more about that particular commission. So,
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
There's one last question, ladies, that I know we've covered off. It would be great just to cover off too. Is it, and Katie, we spoke about this, is it essential that the artist team has done architectural art, or is non-architectural public art okay?
Non-architectural art is definitely okay. I think possibly the best way to answer this, conscious of time, is that really something about Metro is that every aspect of Metro is delivered in teams. And so if there is no single person out there who has all the skills to complete these art commissions. So at the moment, it's just about artists putting their hat in the ring, or artist teams putting their hat in the ring, and showing that they have some kind of experience. if you are shortlisted and you are given this brief, you may then realise that it's to your benefit to get some more technical advice onto your team to advise you about those parameters. But for the minute, it's about artists, and we're looking for the best artists for our project.
Hey, thank you,
good to me.
everyone.
I'll hand it back to you, Amanda.
Yeah, thanks, Elizabeth. I really want to thank everyone from Sydney Metro. Elizabeth, you've done a great job. And Katie, thank you for your insights. Lucas and Bronwyn have been behind the scenes. Thank you so much to Create New South Wales for partnering with us on this. David and Ashley presenting, and Jane Pollard for organising the webinar, and the wonderful Auslan interpreters. Thank you so much for your work, as well as the people doing audio captioning. So I'd like to thank every artist or artist team who's joined us today. Wish you all the best of luck and encourage you to get talking to each other and make those important connections. Thanks, everybody.